You are in bed with the lights out, phone practically glued to your face. You tap open that banking app, then you see it $20,000 staring back at you. It's the first time ever. That number actually begins with a 2 and ends with 4 beautiful zeros. You can't stop looking at it. Something inside you shifts. Suddenly, you're picturing yourself in a better place. Maybe an apartment that doesn't smell weird, an actual vacation where you don't crash at your parents' house, or a vehicle that stops making that dying animal noise when you start it up. But here's what nobody warns you about. The second you look financially stable on paper, everything around you starts to change. Your bank? They're suddenly rolling out premium cards with metal finishes and credit limits that make your eyes widen. That investing app on your phone? Now it's pushing advanced tools, margin trading, and pro-level features you never knew existed. And your social feed? It's packed with people around your age showing off kitchen remodels, business class seats, and brand new cars wrapped in oversized bows. Here's some context. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey, roughly 37% of adults couldn't handle a $400 emergency using just their cash or bank balance. They need to borrow money, sell belongings, or simply let the bill go unpaid. So when you finally reach $20,000, you're already outpacing a massive portion of the population. No wonder it feels like you've crossed some major finish line. But here's the twist nobody talks about. Plenty of folks who hit that milestone end up with less money the following year, not because they're careless or lazy, but because once they win, the entire game shifts on them. Treat that $20,000 like you've reached the end. You'll find yourself riding this brutal cycle. Climb up to 20 grand, crash down to 5 after your car breaks, scrape your way back to 18, then boom, medical emergency drops you to 3. Rinse and repeat for 10 years straight. But if you treat 20,000 like level 1 instead of the final boss, you can make a rule. Never fall below that line again. Everything above it, that becomes your tool for buying time, creating options, and building real freedom. I'm AD, and I'm hooked on understanding how money really functions once you escape the paycheck-to-paycheck trap. Everyone online loves saying just hit 20,000 and let compound interest do the heavy lifting. That's partially true. The other half, that's the brutal part. This video focuses on phase 2, what actually shifts after you reach that number, and how to keep the system from swallowing it whole. Before we dive deeper, quick disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing here counts as personalized financial advice. I'm just someone who nerds out over reports about how money and incentives actually function in the real world. Take this as food for thought and entertainment, not a precise blueprint for your unique situation. If you're about to make serious money decisions, go talk to a real professional who knows your specific circumstances. Let's kick off with the part that hits hardest on a personal level. You're finally getting everything right. You've cut unnecessary spending, maybe sold some stuff you didn't need, picked up a side hustle for a while. Your savings inch up from $200 to $2,000, then to $7,500. Then life happens. Your transmission gives out, your dog swallows something expensive, or you get that cheerful email about your rent going up. And just like that, you're back at square one. If it feels like every time you build something up, reality just reaches in and grabs it, that's not a personal failure. That's the current state of things for most people. Right now, Americans are putting away only about 4 to 5% of their disposable income on average. The official numbers from BEA and USA Facts show the personal saving rate sitting at roughly 4.5% for 2023 and 2024. Compare that to the 1960s and 70s, when people were saving nearly double that amount. What this tells us, the whole system is basically calibrated to keep most people in a state of low-grade financial stress. So when you fight your way up to 20 grand, it genuinely feels massive. You look at that balance and think, all right, I did it. I'm finally safe. But watch what comes next. A few major expenses pile up. You tell yourself, well, that's exactly what savings are for. And you're not wrong about that. The problem is there's no mental rule telling you where the bottom line should be. So you handle the car situation, help out a family member, upgrade your phone, finally take that postponed trip, and suddenly you're sitting at 6,000. You didn't mess up. You just treated that $20,000 like it was a destination instead of treating it like a baseline you refuse to drop below ever again. Reaching $20,000 does something weird to your psychology. Your mindset flips from "I'm drowning" to "maybe I can actually handle this." You stop panicking over every unexpected bill and start thinking, "That's annoying, but I'll manage." At the exact same time, the outside world changes how it treats you. Your bank suddenly sees you as someone worth targeting. Your inbox fills up with exclusive credit opportunities. Apps begin suggesting larger loans, increased credit limits, personal lines of credit you never asked for. On the surface, $20,000 looks like you've made it. But there's a hidden catch. It's also the exact moment when the financial industry starts working overtime to pry that money away from you. You start noticing small shifts. Travel websites default to showing you the nicer hotel options first. Credit card pre-approvals now come with 5-digit limits. You catch yourself thinking, "I can finally enjoy life a little," because you still remember how terrible it felt when your account showed $20, not $20,000. From a psychological standpoint, this makes complete sense. For years, your brain operated in "please don't let anything explode" mode. You were just trying to keep things calm. Now you've got an actual cushion. Of course you want to reward yourself. Meanwhile, the system is banking on exactly that response. Banks don't profit much from customers sitting at zero. They make their money off people who appear stable but can be nudged into long, lucrative contracts. That's what I call the rich tax that nobody officially labels as a tax. When your balance is small, nearly all your progress comes from what you put in, not what it earns. Say you've got $2,000 invested, and the market delivers 10% in a year. That's $200. Nice bonus, but it doesn't transform your life. At $20,000, that same 10% becomes $2,000. Still not enough to quit your job, but you definitely feel the difference. Let's run some quick numbers. If you're setting aside $1,000 monthly and averaging around 8% annual returns, it'll take roughly a year and a half to go from 0 to 20,000. That's 18 to 19 months of discipline, saying no to things, staying focused. And remember, that 8% is based on long-term market averages, not a guaranteed yearly number. Your second 20,000, it doesn't take another year and a half. It comes faster because now your first pile is actually helping. Roughly speaking, at that stage, your investments might be generating several thousand a year without you lifting a finger. Same person, same job, same monthly contribution, but the graph suddenly has a completely different slope. This is when compounding stops feeling like an internet meme and starts feeling real. Vanguard actually studied this. They found that people with at least around $2,000 set aside showed financial well-being scores roughly 21% higher than similar folks with nothing saved. The people who also had 3 to 6 months of expenses tucked away, they saw approximately another 13% bump in well-being. Once you build a real buffer, your stress level drops significantly, and your brain finally gets space to think about growth instead of just staying afloat. Everyone talks about compound interest like it's some kind of magic trick. But here's the thing, if you keep dipping into your account, the math never gets a chance to work the way you're expecting it to. If your balance keeps bouncing back down every time it reaches a new high, it's like planting a tree and then yanking it out of the ground each spring just to check on the roots. Now, let's talk about one of the strangest traps I see after people hit their first major milestone. You spend months, maybe years, being the responsible one in your circle. You pack lunches instead of eating out. You decline invitations to expensive trips. You resist impulse purchases on Amazon. You feel kind of boring at social gatherings. Then you finally see that $20,000 sitting in your account, and something shifts in how you see yourself. I'm actually good with money now. I proved it. So you ease up a bit. You start upgrading small things, nicer wardrobe, better restaurants. You stop checking price tags as carefully. You start telling yourself, I'm not broke anymore. I don't need to stress over every single dollar. You finally feel like a financially responsible adult. But here's the trap. That new self-image can actually trick you into dropping the exact habits that got you here in the first place. You're not doing anything crazy. That's what makes it so sneaky. A streaming service here, a slightly nicer apartment there. You find yourself saying, I deserve this more frequently. And honestly, you do deserve good things. That's not the problem. The problem is your fixed expenses quietly creep upward until they're almost equal to your income again. Suddenly, your margin vanishes, and that $20,000 is carrying all the weight with zero backup. If you let lifestyle inflation eat up your newly created margin, you've basically just swapped one form of stress for another. Instead of, can I even pay rent? It becomes, am I about to blow this one chance I had to get ahead? And here's what makes it worse. The rest of the system is more than happy to help you sabotage yourself. Once your balance looks respectable, you become somebody else's business opportunity. Your bank starts rewarding you with offers, a premium card that charges a few hundred annually, a personal loan for that home improvement project you mentioned once, higher credit limits that come with higher risk. Your investment platform promotes featured funds that happen to carry higher fees. Fintech apps push roundup features and upgraded services that quietly skim a bit more each month. Let's look at some real numbers. As of early 2025, according to Experian's auto finance data, the average new car payment in the US runs about $745 monthly over a 5-year loan term. That totals nearly $45,000 flowing out of your pocket, and new vehicles lose value fast. Ramsey Solutions breaks down how a typical new car loses roughly 20% of its value just in year one. So you're taking tens of thousands of dollars, money that could be purchasing future options, and parking it in your driveway where it's quietly melting away. At the same time, credit card interest rates as of late 2024 are hovering around 24 to 25%. If lifestyle creep nudges you into carrying a balance, that interest rate becomes a bonfire consuming your future purchasing power. Then there's the fund selection issue. Basic index mutual funds that simply track the market can have expense ratios as low as roughly 0.05%. According to the Investment Company Institute, comparable actively managed equity funds average around 0.65%. Let's do the math on a $20,000 investment. At 0.05%, you're paying about $10 annually. At 0.65%, that's approximately $130 per year. That gap compounds year after year just because you picked the expert selected option over the boring one. None of this feels dramatic when it's happening. It's just a car payment, just a credit card, just a fund choice, just a modest rent increase. But stack all of that on top of a savings rate that's already razor thin, and you start to see why so many people reach 20 grand, feel grown up for about a year, then wonder where their progress disappeared to. Here's the mental framework I wish someone had taught me at 22. Once you reach that first significant milestone, maybe it's 20,000, maybe it's a bit less or more depending on your cost of living, you stop thinking about it as just savings. You start thinking about it as three distinct layers. Layer one is your floor. This is your never drop below this money, your emergency cushion, rent, food, absolute minimum bills for several months. The exact number of months depends on your personal situation, but that 3 to 6 month range you always hear, real research backs it up. That same Vanguard study found that having 3 to 6 months of expenses saved on top of an initial buffer correlated with a major stress reduction and a meaningful increase in overall financial well-being. For a lot of people in the US, this lands somewhere between 15,000 and 25,000. Layer 2 is your growth zone. That's money with one job, buying you freedom down the road. Long-term investments, retirement planning, maybe future housing. This layer works quietly in the background. Layer 3 is your fun and options money, Upgrades, travel, taking that class to switch careers, helping a friend launch a business, relocating to a different city, everything that makes your life better right now or creates more opportunity later. You should absolutely enjoy some of your money once you pass that first 20,000 mark. But here's the key. The enjoyment has to come from the layers sitting above your floor, not from the floor itself. Let's say your monthly bare minimum living cost is $3,000. 3 months equals 9,000. 6 months equals 18,000. So maybe you set your floor at 20,000. If you've got 26,000 saved up, that extra 6,000 is where growth and fun both live. Maybe you allocate 4,000 to investments and 2,000 to actual life enjoyment over the next year. The rule is straightforward. You can shift money between growth and fun as your priorities change, but you don't touch the floor unless you're facing a genuine emergency. And genuine emergency doesn't mean flash sale on flights or my phone feels outdated. Your floor isn't a trophy. It's the foundation supporting every other decision you make moving forward. There's another trap that appears once you've finally accumulated a decent chunk of money. You log into your investment app, and for the first time, the graph actually looks impressive. You're staring at 5 figures, maybe even high 5 figures if you've been grinding hard. You start thinking, okay, but how do I accelerate this? How do I turn 20,000 into 200,000 quickly? And the internet is thrilled to answer. Options trading, meme coins, leveraged ETFs, penny stocks, that person on TikTok who supposedly turned $500 into 2 million trading momentum breakouts in 2021. Once you've got real money in the game, swinging for the fences becomes tempting. But here's the issue. One smart-looking bet gone sideways can erase years of slow, disciplined progress. And there's painful data on this. In 2024, the S&P 500 returned about 25%. Dalbar's investor behavior study shows the average equity investor only captured around 16.5%, nearly 9 percentage points less, primarily because they jumped in and out at the wrong moments. That's just 1 year, but it aligns with the longer-term pattern. That gap doesn't exist because people are stupid. It exists because we're human. When you watch a $20,000 portfolio swing by thousands in a single week, your emotions get loud. Fear when it drops, greed when it spikes. And if you put your floor money into highly volatile stuff, those emotions become unbearable. Here's my personal rule. The floor lives in cash and extremely boring, extremely safe assets. The growth layer mainly lives in diversified, low-cost index funds or similar straightforward strategies. The I want to experiment portion lives in a tiny slice of the fun options layer. If you want to throw 5% of your portfolio at something spicy once you're stable, that's your call. Just don't fool yourself into thinking gambling equals a retirement strategy. The goal isn't avoiding risk entirely. Risk is how you get compensated. The goal is never letting one foolish risk drag you back to zero. Let me put all of this into 2 parallel stories. 2 people, same country, similar income levels. We'll call them Jack and Sam. Both reached $20,000 in savings in their early 30s. Jack sees that $20,000 and thinks, finally, I'm not behind anymore. They upgrade to a nicer car, move into a better apartment at the top of their budget, pick up a couple premium cards for the rewards points, and occasionally dip into savings for trips and gadgets. They fully intend to invest more once life settles down, but life never really settles. Sometimes their balance hits 25,000, other times they're back down to 8. Their retirement account grows, but slowly. By their 40s, Jack's earning decent money but still feels trapped. They can't say no at work. They tolerate the bad boss, the unpaid overtime, the constant anxiety because that savings cushion just isn't solid enough to take any risks. Sam reaches 20,000 and makes a different choice. They decide, this is my floor. I'm not dropping below this number again unless something genuinely serious forces me to. They keep driving their boring but reliable car. They keep housing costs reasonable. They don't chase every lifestyle upgrade their coworkers chase. They funnel new savings into their growth layer, simple index funds, boring retirement accounts. Vanguard's How America Saves report from the end of 2023 shows the average retirement account they manage sits at roughly $134,000. The median, only around $35,000. In other words, tons of people in their 40s and 50s have way less saved than you'd expect. Sam decides they don't want to end up in that median group. Sam also uses some of their funds at Options Layer to buy career flexibility. They pay for a certification. They take a temporary income hit to transition into a role with better long-term potential. They're able to push back on workplace nonsense because, worst case scenario, they can survive for months without a paycheck. A 2025 survey from the Interview Guys found that 44% of employees stick with jobs they genuinely dislike because their salary feels like their only security. Sam doesn't want to be stuck in that 44% forever. By their late 40s, Jack and Sam can have nearly identical incomes on paper, but radically different amounts of freedom. Jack stays trapped saying yes to everything because falling to zero would mean falling off a financial cliff. Sam can say no whenever necessary because their floor and growth layers are actually doing their jobs. Some of you might be thinking, this sounds like a rich person problem. I'll worry about level 2 stuff if I ever actually get there. Here's what I wish more people understood. Most people do eventually touch something like 20,000 at some point in their lives. A good bonus year, an inheritance, a few solid years stacked together. The real question isn't, will I ever reach 20,000? The question is, when I do, will I treat it like a trophy or a foundation? When you're stuck in phase 1, money means stuff. Can I afford coffee today? Can I buy that plane ticket? Can I get a car that doesn't sound like it's dying? After 20,000, the real upgrade is money becoming about options instead. Options like taking 3 months between jobs without panicking, moving to a city that actually fits you better, working 4 days a week instead of 5, walking away from a boss who treats you poorly. Life genuinely gets easier after that first 20,000. But here's the catch. Whether it keeps getting easier depends far more on your next few decisions than on whatever number you hit today. If phase 1 was escaping chaos, phase 2 is about not drifting back into it just because everyone told you you're fine now. Here's your simple playbook. First, figure out what your real floor is. How much do you need to feel secure for a few months? Treat that number like a line you refuse to cross downward without an extremely good reason. Second, build your growth layer above that floor. Boring, low-cost investments that work quietly while you're actually living your life, not staring at charts all day. Third, create a fun and options layer so you can genuinely enjoy your money and make bold moves without destroying your foundation. Fourth, stay suspicious of anything that starts selling harder when your savings grow. If a product, a vehicle, or an opportunity consumes your floor or your growth layer, that's not a reward. That's just the system taxing away your progress. And finally, when you do mess up, and you will, I certainly have, treat it like a detour, not like proof you're doomed. Rebuild your floor, restart your plan, keep focusing on the options you're purchasing, not the stuff. Because here's the real catch with money. Yes, the number in your bank account matters, but the rules you establish for what happens after you reach that number, those matter even more. You don't need to transform into some finance expert. You just need to protect your first 20,000 like it's the floor your entire future life stands on, and refuse to let the world or your own impulses turn it back into a finish line.